In this video, we're going to find the whole given a common percent and an amount. So we're going to find the indicated amounts. We'll round any answers to 2 decimal places when we need to. We're going to use a calculator for computations, but we're going to make sure to write down the expression that we put in the calculator. So let's read through the problem and highlight important information. The Geology Club is taking a trip to Hawaii to explore volcanoes. 20% of the club can make the trip, which is a total of 12 students. And here's the question. How many students are in the Geology Club in total? So let's think about what these parts represent. So we have, remember, we're told we're given a common percent and an amount, and we want to find the whole. Okay. So we said before that the whole is usually what's followed by the word of. So let's read through this. 20% of the club can make the trip, and then it says which is a total of 12 students. So which of is referring to the whole? Well, 20% of the club is 12 students. It's saying a total of 12 students, but the whole is referring to the total number of people in the club. The 12 students is the amount that is 20%. Okay, so it's easy to identify the percent because of the word percent. This is referring to the whole, and 12 students is an amount that is 12 students is 20% of the club. Okay, and we're trying to find how many students are in the Geology Club in total. So looking at our number lines, we have a percent and a whole number line. And notice we have a few things labeled. So the information we have is that 20% of the club is 12 students. And what we want to find is how many students are in the club in total, the whole, which is 100% of the club. Okay, so let's think of how we're going to find this. So notice I have the number line is partitioned into 5 equal pieces. So let's see where I got that 5 equal pieces from. I divided 100 by 20 to get 5 because I wanted to see how many copies of 20 are in 100. Okay, so the idea here is this is 20%. If I keep adding on 20% to 100%, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 copies of this amount in the total 100%. Okay, and the reason I want to use that is now I can do the same idea with the whole. So if 20% is 12, 40% is 2 times 12. 60% is 3 times 12, or just add 12 more. Add 12 more again, and add 12 more again to get 60. So 60 is the total number of people in the Geology Club. Okay. So we did this by writing all this information on the number line, which really illustrates what we're doing. We're cutting the number line into a certain number of pieces so we could find the number of copies of the percent we're given relative to the whole percent of 100. Okay, and then we take our original part amount, okay, that we're given, and to find the whole, sorry, this isn't dollars, this is people, we keep adding 5 copies of 12. So symbolically, what did we do? Well, we took our value of 12 and we multiplied it by 5 to get 60 students. Okay, but where did this 5 come from? So it's not always going to be a number as nice as 5. Well, the 5 came from, we want 100%. 12 is equal to 20%. So we want to multiply 12 by 100 over 20. Okay, so this is 12 times 100 over 20. Okay, and And if we multiply through, we could do this on the calculator if you want. 12 times 100 divided by 20 gives us the 60 students. Okay, so taking the 12, another way to think of this, and dividing it by 20, that's going to tell us 1%. So if we divided this 12 by 20, we would get 1%. Then we multiply by 100 to take this value of 1% and find 100%. Okay? So it basically boils down, take your amount and multiply by 100 over the percent that this number is of the whole. Let's look at another example. Finn bought a mountain bike for 30% off. If he paid $245 for the bike, what was the original price before the sale? Okay, so let's think about what our percent, our part, and what our whole are. Okay, now notice this says he paid $245 for the bike, and we want to find the original price before the sale. Well, this is a part. This is what he paid for 30% off. Okay, so this is our amount. This is not our whole. Our whole is going to be the original price. Now, even though this says 30% here, it's tempting to just write 30%, but 245 isn't 30% of the bike, it's 30% off the amount of the bike. So 30% off is 70% of. Okay, so the original price of the bike is 100% of the price. Subtract off 30% and we have 70%. Okay, so writing this in words, we could say that $245 is 75% of the original price of the bike. And if you can write this in words, it's a great idea because notice we can see this was 70%, so sorry, that it says of the original price and then the words following of indicate the whole. So now let's see what we could do with the number line here. So we know 70%. I'm going to count backwards here. So 70% corresponds to $245. Okay. Now, thinking of copies of language, this one is a little tricky, but we want to know how many 70%, how many copies of 70% are in 100%. Okay, and in the last case it was 20% and 100%. We knew we just had 5 copies. It was a little bit easier, but we're going to use the same idea here. So notice in 100% there's 1 copy of 70%. Then we have 3 more pieces. Well, relative to 70%, that's 3/7 of 70%. So we have 1 and 3/7. So that's one way to think about the copies. Now the easier way, which I'm sure you're hoping for, is just like we did before. If we divide the 100% by 70%, we get 100 over 70, which is 10/7. So 100% is 10/7 times as large as 70%. And notice we use mixed numbers here, but 1 and 3/7 is equivalent to 10/7. Okay? So that's our first piece of information. So now, since this is broken into 10% equal pieces, or 10 equal pieces, this is 10%. We know that if we divide 245 by 7, okay, then we can find what all of these values are. 10%, 20%, 30%, etc. So 245 divided by 7, let's see what that is. Well, that's 35. So 10% of the whole, which we don't know, is $35. Get 70, 105, 140, 175, 210. So I'm just counting by 35s here because 35 is 10%. Because 245 is 70%, I divide it by 7 to find each of the 10%. Okay. Now I could keep going and I could find what the whole is. So now we have 280. Add 35 is 315. Add 35 is 350 more. Okay. Now again, we just did this process the long way. We reasoned through this. How could we do this symbolically? So remember what we did. We took our amount, 245. Okay, and I'm going to set up the fraction I'm going to multiply by. Okay. Now looking at, we divided in the beginning 100% by 70%. We said that's the same as 10 sevenths. We divided the 245 into 7 equal pieces. I'm going to, since we're dividing or cutting, I'm going to divide here in the denominator. And then we took, this is our 10%, and then we took 10 copies, which got us 350. Okay, notice this is equivalent to 245 times 100 over 70. So just like in the last problem, you take your amount and you multiply by a fraction. That's 100%, which is the whole, divided by the percent that you're given, which in this case is 70%. Let's go ahead and do this on the calculator to verify. 245 times 100 divided by 70 gives us $350, which corresponds to our other result. So the original price of the bike before the sale was $350. Let's do one last one. Don went skiing and rented ski boots. The total cost for the rental, including tax, was $19.80. If the tax rate was 10%, how much did the rental cost before tax? Okay. So here are our number lines. This time, we're given that 110% is $19.80. We want to find 100%. Okay. So we want to find this value right here. So notice, we're going to use the same idea as last time. Well, we want to know 100% is what part of 110%. So it will be 100 over 110. So remember, we take the original 100% we're trying to find divided by the percent we're given. And notice 100% is 10 elevenths of 110%. Okay. Now that's what we're going to do here. So this is broken into 11 pieces up to 1980. Each of them is a 10%. So divide the 1980 by the 11 equal pieces and we get $1.80. So 1980 divided by 11 is $1.80. Okay. So each one of these 10% is $1.80. Okay. Now I'm not going to count all of them, so you could fill that in if you'd like. But remember, we want 10 copies. 100% is 10 copies of 10%. So 10 copies of 180. Well, 10 times 180 is $18. Okay. So the original price of the rental before tax was $18. The tax was $1.80, which brought the total up to $19.80 with tax. Okay, so symbolically, just like the last ones, okay, you take the amount you're given, $19.80, and you're going to multiply by the percent you want, which is 100%, over the percent you're given, which in this case was the 10% tax plus the 100% for the cost. Okay. This divides the 1980 into 110 pieces to find 1%. This multiplies by 100 to find 100%. Let's do this on the calculator, and we use simplified fractions here, which is fine, but if you're going to go symbolically, you can just use this amount. So 19.8 times 100 divided by 110. And we get our result of $18.